Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into the life of an absolute legend of the 64 squares, Vasily Smyslov. Widely known as the gentleman of chess, Smyslov is just a fascinating study. And why? Because he didn't dominate the board with that cold, ruthless calculation you might normally expect from a world champion. Instead, he relied on this unparalleled, serene, almost artistic temperament. So let's jump right in and discover how the ultimate example of harmony and intuition managed to conquer the chess world.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the opera singer chess champion.
To really grasp Smyslov's unique genius, you have to know a pretty surprising fact about him. He wasn't just a world-class chess player, he was actually a professionally trained opera singer. I mean, think about that. He famously declared, "I think in terms of harmony." And what's so cool about this mindset is that whether he was hitting a soaring high note on a concert stage or finding the perfect, subtle chess move on the board, he was relentlessly seeking the exact same things: balance, beauty, and perfection. For him, it wasn't just about winning the game, it was literally about creating a masterpiece.
This brings us to Section 2, Intuition versus the Machine.
So, Smyslov's effortless, natural intuition stood in stark contrast to his great rival, Mikhail Botvinnik. Smyslov represented pure artistic intuition. He didn't just sit there calculating endless lines of moves in his head. He quite literally felt where the pieces naturally belonged on the board. Botvinnik, on the other hand, well, he was known as the engineer, embodying strict scientific calculation. His approach was logical, mechanical, and highly structured. It was basically the ultimate showdown, the artist against the machine.
In this battle of art versus science, it didn't just happen once. It played out in a grueling world championship marathon across the 1950s. They clashed first in 1954, but Smyslov's artistic approach reached its absolute peak a few years later, in 1957. That's when he finally dethroned Botvinnik, proving once and for all that his intuitive style could conquer the scientific method, and he became the 7th world champion. Botvinnik would eventually come back for the rematch in 1958, cementing this whole era as one of the most intense and, frankly, fascinating rivalries in the history of the sport.
Now moving on to Section 3, Master of the Endgame.
If you want to know exactly how he pulled off these monumental victories against such mechanical precision, you have to look at his endgame technique. He is universally considered one of the greatest endgame players in history, applying what's been called a chamber music approach. Basically, he treated the final phase of the game not as chaotic noise or some brute force brawl, but as a precise, minimalist, and deeply elegant piece of music. He prioritized harmony over force, making absolutely sure that all his remaining pieces worked together in a perfectly synchronized chorus.
And that brings us to the magic of his invisible moves. Because he felt the underlying harmony of a position, he could find these tiny, subtle adjustments on the board that computers today would completely admire, but human opponents back then, they just couldn't see them coming. He possessed this magical touch where he could take what looked like a completely dead, totally drawish position and slowly, beautifully spin it into a win. It literally left his opponents baffling over where they even went wrong.
Let's fast forward a bit to Section 4, the grandfather of chess.
By the early 1980s, Smyslov was well past the age when most chess professionals hang up their boards and completely retire from competitive play. Yet at 62 years old, he shocked the entire chess world by preparing for an unbelievable encore. Defying all the odds, he actually won the grueling candidates tournament. He was navigating through fields of players who were less than half his age, all to once again become the challenger for the world championship. No way anyone saw that coming. This astounding run culminated in a 1984 match of absolute extremes. You had the returning 62-year-old grandfather of chess going up against the young, fiery 20-year-old prodigy, Garry Kasparov. Just think about that age gap for a second. This match remains, to this very day, one of the most jaw-dropping examples of longevity in the history of professional sports. It proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that his intuitive, harmonious understanding of the game was quite literally timeless.
Which leads us to our final section, the legacy of serenity.
So, what should you take away from all this? Well, Smyslov's legacy is incredibly profound for anyone who loves the game. First off, he proved unequivocally that you don't have to be a cold, calculating machine to reach the absolute top of your field. An artist really can reign supreme. Second, in a sport famously known for being incredibly cutthroat and intense, Smyslov was uniquely universally loved and respected by his peers. And finally, he left behind a truly enduring body of work. His games and his endgame compositions, they aren't just studied today for their technical accuracy. They're studied for their pure aesthetic beauty. They are, quite simply, works of art.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to ponder and debate. In your own pursuit of absolute mastery, whatever that might be, what do you think is actually more important? Is it cold scientific calculation, or is it that deep, harmonious, artistic intuition? Vasily Smyslov certainly made his case on the board, and I think we can all agree it was a beautiful one. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and I hope this gives you a brand new appreciation for the gentleman of chess.